Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cato here, and I'm going to bring in my two co-hosts in just a second. Thank you very much for joining along to today's episode. We are recapping the 2021 Portuguese Grand Prix here on episode number 104. And before we get right into all of the race events, just a reminder that this podcast is sponsored by the GP Box, the world's leading motorsport marketplace website. You can go into the video description down below and find a bunch of exclusive discount code links, courtesy of our friends at GP Box, that you can use exclusive to Backmarkers F1 Show viewers and get yourself some awesome F1 merchandise that I think you'll really, really enjoy. All right, now that all the official corporate stuff is out of the way, tonight joining me, also from Ottawa, Canada, still on the Zoom edition of the podcast, I got Tyler McDonald. Tyler, good day to you, or actually good evening by the time we're recording this. How's it going?
All pretty good. It was a good race in Portugal. Not as exciting as last year, but all in all, I thought the fans got what they deserved in Portugal. And all is well over here. How about you, Chris?
Oh, yeah, doing good. I would agree with the same shots on the race. You know, it was first half of the race, I think we were messaging back and forth, was very exciting and in a strategic battle, but the second half of the race kind of just fell off a little bit. But nonetheless, it was just nice to see again that the top two championship contenders were really the main focus in Portugal, which was awesome. So the third member of our team, Shaker Barty, as well. You saw him on the live stream this past weekend. He's back for this episode as well. Shaker, how is it going?
Good. You know, just getting ready for the summer.
Yeah,
race next week, basically.
Yeah, right. Good joke. We had snow 2-3 days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It's currently May the 3rd, so. Yeah, well, hopefully it'll get here, before July at least. But anyways, let's roll right into all the stuff that happened from this race, and let's begin obviously with what was really the main talking point. We had a bunch of smaller events that we're going to get to, but the main focus was obviously the championship battle, right? Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton, and very interesting in this race that they exchanged positions, right? You saw Verstappen getting the better of Hamilton at the restart, and then of course Lewis coming back and eventually passing Max for position and then going on to win the race. So it wasn't necessarily Red Bull's weekend. They struggled a lot with these windy conditions. I think also struggled with the harder tire allocation, especially when they went on to the C1 tire, the white sidewall. They very, very much struggled in comparison to Mercedes. So with that in mind, I think at the end of the day for Verstappen, second place, probably the best that they could have hoped for. If he would have been able to start on pole position, maybe he would have been able to steal the victory, but I just think Hamilton's pace was just too much in the end in Portugal.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, it was interesting though at first when he overtook Lewis on that restart, like you mentioned, Chris, and it was a beautiful move, by the way, just to catch Lewis sleeping on the restart. Bottas waited a long time for things to get going. And then when he took off, it's almost like Verstappen timed it perfectly with Bottas, and he actually had a lift when he was going down the straightaway to make sure not to pass Lewis before the start-finish straights. Otherwise, it would have been a penalty. So I thought it was a very well-timed move from Max. And he got his team the upper hand in that sense, because I think if he wouldn't have gotten that pass, there's no chance he would have been able to push for first or to be able to maybe push for second as well. The track position really helped him throughout the whole race. So unfortunately, didn't come out with the win because Lewis pulled a beautiful move right back on Max. And the Red Bulls really struggled for straight line speed. Throughout the whole weekend, it seemed the only time really looked like they had speed was when Sergio Perez passed Lando Norris midway through the race. So something for Red Bull to work on, of course, but just a beautiful drive by Lewis once again.
Yeah, I agree. A beautiful drive from Lewis, and I think we can all say that he doesn't drive differently if he's in first place or second place, shown by his pass on Perez, thinking he was in first the entire time. So yeah, but just great drive from Lewis Hamilton, even from Max to, get that initial overtake right off that first lap and kind of do what he can with it. And then in the end, obviously he came out a little bit short, but great drive overall from both of them. And even Valtteri, he did what he could in the end to get the podium. But yeah, great drive overall from everyone this weekend, to be honest.
Lewis was looking for blue flags on Perez because he thought he was, he was lapping the Red Bulls last year around Portimao. He, figured that he was lapping him again, but is he looking for those blue flags? But I thought it was a pretty funny moment when his engineer came back. Nope, that's for position, Lewis.
It's like
Yeah.
you're racing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like you said, Tyler. He's not used to passing the second Red Bull for position, right? So
Yeah.
I think Perez led more laps in that race than Albon and Gasly did in their entire Red Bull careers. Which we're going to get to Perez in just a moment with his strategy. But just you guys were touching on Valtteri Bottas. Actually, he quite disappointed me in the race. In the weekend, I was impressed by him. Obviously, he got pole position, which was a little bit of a surprise, I must say, but it was a very good lap. And you could see how upbeat he was, kind of not so much the Mercedes garage when they cut to the scenes after he got pole. It looked like they were having a funeral procession instead. But Valtteri was very upbeat and ready to insert himself back into the championship. And then in the race, okay, he started off decently. I was really disappointed, though, when Hamilton got by him in the sense that the defense from Bottas was just not good. It was just not good at all. And he's got to get his elbows out. I'm not saying crash into him, but look at how Max is willing to rub tires with Lewis and go wheel to wheel with him. I just think Bottas let him by too easily.
Well, I really noticed that Lewis was really struggling at the start of the race on his tires, and then all of a sudden he got it in the perfect working temperature, and his car was on rails. He was passing everyone. There's no corrections at all. He was just loving life in that car. And for me, it just seemed Valtteri never got those working temperatures perfect with his tires, and just continued to, not struggle, but he just didn't have that car on rails like Lewis did. So I'm not sure if that was maybe the issue or what, but it just seemed that the Lewis did a lot better job getting his tires exactly where he wanted. Maybe Valtteri took too much life out of his tires at first. I'm not sure. But yeah, like you said, I would have liked him to defend a little harder against Lewis. I think I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, the Rosberg style, how Rosberg battled Lewis and how there was that rivalry, that intensity, and no inch is going to be given either way. And it's the complete opposite with these two, with Valtteri and Hamilton. Maybe that's what Mercedes want, and that's why they have Valtteri in that seat. But I want to see Valtteri do well, because he generally seems like a good guy, and he's a fantastic race car driver.
But I might just say, just before we get to Shaker's thoughts, when Lewis got on the radio and he said, tires are gone, or whatever he said, I was like, I knew he was lying through his teeth. And
always does.
Next thing you know, purple sector, purple sector, purple sector. I'm like, yeah, he's not fooling me this time.
It's got to be a code word or something. Like, gone means like, okay, they're perfect. I'm gone. Like, I'm gonna go flying through the field.
Yeah.
Because whenever he says that, he lights it up.
Yeah, I mean, you guys aren't wrong. I think Valtteri obviously didn't get it at the end, but I think to get the fastest lap right at the very end to kind of make up for what was, not the greatest race, but over probably a great overall race weekend for him, probably better than the rest that he's had, but obviously not a great race. But just to get the fastest lap at the end, just by what, 200th of a second to get it to, and then 200ths of a second or something like that. Not too bad. And we always talk about the Rosberg and Hamilton, rivalry, but I think now, kind of like knowing the sport a little bit more, I guess, watching 5 years now, I can't remember. But I think it was a different rivalry. I don't think Valtteri has the exact same, drive that Nico Rosberg had, with Lewis, driving with Lewis Hamilton since he was very young, to be that driver, to be pushing Hamilton the entire way. But I think it was okay. Not great. Still got the points, still in top 3, not bad.
You mentioned that Valtteri getting the fast lap of the race, and obviously he got pole, but like both times it was because Max went off track. If Max stays on track for both those times, Max gets pole and he gets fastest lap of the race. So I mean, you can look at that perspective too, where he had his car dialed up and technically beat Lewis in qualifying and on the fastest lap of the race. But I mean, Max also kind of got not shafted. I'm glad they're inflicting the rules. We have the rules set now. Hopefully this stays for Spain. Because I think Max said, I didn't know they were checking track limits in turn 14, but I guess so, whatever. I think that's what he said after the race for the fastest lap. So, I mean, maybe we'll see. But it's just an interesting little note there as well that, the Red Bull is pretty handy around the track on its own.
Yeah, he was wrong about that though, because
Oh,
they were actually enforcing it in turn 14,
okay.
and I wasn't honestly necessarily surprised either, because I actually knew that in turn 14 they were enforcing it, and I forget exactly which other corners they were in qualifying. Turn 4 as well, if you remember the oversteer moment Verstappen had in Q3, I believe it was, or Q2. So they were actually enforcing it. So I'm not sure if maybe that was just some gamesmanship that Verstappen was doing, but it all factors in, and it's a good point that you bring up as well. That just he wasn't happy with the car. You know, all the way throughout the weekend was just struggling, and he wasn't really happy with the track surface, the harder tires. So I think that was the case, and what we talked about going into this race was going to be the key is which team can fire the tires up into the right working window. And it seems like Mercedes did just that. Obviously, there's some of the improvements that they've made to the car since Bahrain. You're seeing that they're a little bit closer now, and Red Bull and Mercedes are almost evenly matched now. And it's going to really differ circuit to circuit, right? And just the right conditions. So ultimately, again, as I said off the top of the show, getting that P2 championship leads is only 8 points. Would have been nice to get the extra point, but at the end of the day, sort of damage limitation in a way. And they even post race in the radio, they seemed quite happy with that result, regardless.
Yeah, I
I
think they
think
were pretty. Go ahead, Shaker.
I was going to say, I think Max said it best, is that, well, at the end of the race, it's the best that they could hope for this weekend and the best that they got, in terms of, fighting. Oh my God, I keep staring off. Sorry, let me restart that. I think, I think Max said it best at the end of the race. It's the best that they could have hoped for this weekend. Getting second, fighting with Mercedes the entire way, and putting on the pressure that they could. Good strategy with Perez, keeping him out as long as they could to try and keep that fight between Valtteri a little bit close, but obviously it wasn't, keeping some of the McLarens back as well. So I think in the end, it's the best that Red Bull could have hoped for as a team for the entire weekend. They got double points. Perez is getting more comfortable with the car. I think we'll definitely see more at Spain.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that we can segue that into the next topic perfectly, which was Sergio Perez, and I've got two topics tied together here because it relates to Perez. I think this was the first race in which we saw the actual team battle going on of Red Bull versus Mercedes, where Perez didn't make any mistakes and was somewhat in contention. Obviously, he got passed by Norris early on, so that kind of hampered his race just a little bit. But you show why Sergio Perez is so valuable to this team, being able to almost do the entire race distance on the medium tire. And I thought at first that was a strategy that they were going to try and back Lewis up into Verstappen, but he was too far away. And then obviously by the time Hamilton caught up, Perez's tires were actually done, and he really did need to come into the pits. But again, having that option for Red Bull is just something new to them compared to the last 2 years. And then like you guys mentioned, getting that fastest lap, which is a big bonus for them too. So I think that all in all, a decent weekend for Sergio Perez. And like you said, Shaker, he's building very nicely into the next couple of races and getting more comfortable. So Valtteri's going to have his work cut out for him as well to try and cover off the second Red Bull. But I think that nice to see Perez finally insert himself into the championship battle a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned how you're talking about Perez and backing, maybe backing Lewis up into Max. And Martin Brundle, I don't know if you guys heard on the broadcast, Martin Brundle asked Christian Horner that on the pit wall and said, "Oh, are you backing Lewis into Max?" And of course, Christian goes, "Now that would be unsporting, Martin. You can't do that." So it's kind of funny how, they were, but they obviously can't admit to it because I believe it's technically against the rules. So, yeah, I mean, it's the strategy you're going to pull. It's nice that they have a second Red Bull, like you mentioned, Chris, to go fight their battles. And hopefully Sergio can get a few podiums and fight for a few podiums this year. I think he'll be able to, and hopefully fight for a couple wins eventually once we get, I'd say maybe Turkey would be a good starting point for him. Monaco, I guess, is really anyone's game, but it's tough. You have to have a good qualifying lap in Monaco. I think once he can really get to grips with things, it'll be really interesting to see the 2v2 battle going out between them.
Yeah, 100%. And part of the reason why Lewis Hamilton was able to catch up to Perez quite rapidly was because Perez almost lost his lead of the race thanks to a driver that's mainly pissed off everybody on the grid so far, with the exception of maybe, I think, Lewis and I don't think he's pissed off Max just yet because I would have remembered that one.
I'm
He's
sure
even pissed
it'll
off
come.
Nick, and Mick's his teammate.
Yeah, and well, Mick's a sweetheart of a guy too.
Right.
So I guess maybe let's talk about the incident first because
Yeah.
I've got a clip from our favorite Twitter account, F1 Portrayed by Top Gear, which is kind of becoming a tradition now on the podcast to play at least one clip. So we'll do that in the end to wrap it up. But it's I've tried to be fair and professional with talking about Mazepin, and I know some of the actual guys on the Sky broadcast, in other words, are not as, I guess, professional or whatever you want to call it. They cut straight to the point and they're honest about it, which I do appreciate anyways. But I said, okay, I'm going to give him a couple races and let's see. But it's getting really hard and harder to defend him, if that's the right word, or to make excuses for him. That was just a brutal move. And, you could just imagine if that was a Hamilton or a Verstappen, and that leads to, them getting out of the race or getting passed or something like that. But it's coming to a point where in a couple races time, if this doesn't get any better, there does need to be some serious talks about, can this guy even race on the grid? Because the best news about Mazepin being in an F1 is the other pay drivers on the grid, let's say like Lance Stroll or Nicholas Latifi, who have been called that, they look like superstars now in comparison to this guy, right? So I guess, what are your thoughts on him? And there's not really much that can be done because obviously the situation Haas is in, but just like, come on, guys.
Well, I mean, if this is in NASCAR, let's say, Chris, that gets your head punched in. like it's pretty simple. That was one of the stupidest moves I've seen in a long time. I mean, you have the leader coming up to you and you pull back, but then try to pass him along the outside. Like, it made zero sense. And that wasn't the first incident with Mazepin this weekend, because, of course, I'm not sure if you remember, we were covering it during our live stream for qualifying. And that was him getting in the way of Nicholas Latifi during a flying lap. Latifi accidentally got in the way of Mazepin. Fair enough. He didn't know he was coming behind him. And Latifi said to his engineer, "You got to let me know." But Latifi was calling it going down the straight, saying, "He's going to get in my way going into turn one, isn't he?" And like, they get to turn one, he's like, "What an asshole." He got in my way. Like, obviously I didn't do it on purpose, and called him a few more aggressive words than I'll say, but got right in the way of Latifi's for his flying lap as well, which is maybe a reason Latifi didn't get out of Q1. It could not be, but still. And then he does that to Sergio Perez in the race, where he gets right in the way. And I mean, I think they were saying he had 5 blue flags sent to him, which, I mean, the limit's 3. It's 3 blue flags maximum to get out of the way. He had 5, which shows you that, I mean, it's very easy to let him buy down the straight, and I'm not sure what was going through his head, but I mean, we're only 3 races in the season. We have like 10 incidents with Mazepin now. It's something's going to need to be addressed, whether if it's in a driver's meeting or a veteran driver like Vettel or Hamilton or Raikkonen. Take him aside and say, "Hey," even Perez, I mean, he's a veteran now too. Take him
Kevin
aside.
Magnussen back in here. Give him the talk and get this guy fired. Get him off the grid.
K-Mag should 100% be in that car. Who's the reserve driver for Haas? Do we know? Is it Ilott?
No, it's Fittipaldi.
Yeah.
Oh, he was great last year.
Yeah.
No, I just want, like, if it was a veteran like Kubica, that'd be someone we can mentor and say, "Hey, let's come aside and let's talk about this." But I guess if you don't have a mentor, like a veteran, as a reserve driver, it's kind of hard to do. So it's going to have to be from someone on the grid.
I don't know if it was a motivation booster or like something, but his race engineer said he was keeping up with his times, and some were better, were like keeping up with like Latifi and George Russell. Again, that is not a great motivation booster, because they were suffering all weekend. They couldn't hold their car together. Their tires were not keeping it together. So obviously they weren't getting their times. If you're struggling keeping up with a car that's struggling to keep on the track and still not making times, I don't know how you can last 21 races throughout the season.
Well, and that's just it too, right? That's the other part of this conversation that we need to have. Like, I just did the Mick Schumacher video that we released today on the channel. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. But I just looked into what's the teammate battle is between the two. Mick is leading it 3-0 in both qualifying and the race. He's out qualifying Mazepin on average by 0.6. And then in the race, for example, in Portugal, he finished almost a minute ahead of Mazepin. Yeah, I know he had the 5-second penalty, but still, a minute ahead. Schumacher eventually got by Latifi, showed great pace throughout the entire race and just the whole weekend and well. So to your point, Shaker, it's one thing to pull him aside and have a talk with him, but there's a clear talent that's missing. Now, again, like people said that about Stroll as well, but given time, Stroll showed pace and results and everything like that. I know it's early, it's only 3 races, but again, Stroll and these other quote-unquote pay drivers never had these sort of issues where they were really getting on the nerves of their fellow drivers.
Lance Stroll is still the youngest podium winner till this day. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
Very good point.
So, I mean, yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
No, go ahead.
No, that was my main point.
I want to place bets on Monaco, and I have 2 specifically. One, how many cars is he going to wreck, or how many times is he going to crash during the practices, qualifying, and race in Monaco?
His car's not making it to the race.
2, how many laps does he last in the race?
His car doesn't make it to the race. I'm 100% serious. I don't think that he can finish free qualifying. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think he can finish qualifying, and the Haas engineers have the time to put that car back together. And if they do, I don't think he's making it past turn 1.
Turn 1?
That's
what you're saying?
I'm 100% serious. I'm not even joking. He hasn't made it past I don't think it's happening, unfortunately.
We can talk about this more when it comes close to Monaco, but I mean, like,
he can't make it over 2 lanes, Tyler.
So
you can't let a car pass him in 2 lanes.
Imagine the blue flags in Monaco.
Yeah,
that's where we might see this all explode. Honestly, we might see this explode in Monaco.
There's if you can't let a car pass you with space and see the blue flags, like how are you supposed to make it past 20 cars past turn 1? Like.
Do you guys want to see a nice visual of what Mazepin in Monaco might look like?
Oh my God! Yeah,
is this the Top Gear video?
I've got that queued up, but this is actually a different one. But
okay.
Because you said you guys were talking about Monaco, it just jolted something in my brain that I saw. Okay, hold on. Just share audio as well. Share sound. Okay, I don't think there's sound on this, but I'll play the Top Gear ones after. So. Great point that you guys are bringing up. I'm so glad that you talked about this because that could be a disaster if it's not cleaned up by then, but it could look a little something like this.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Straight up. I think that's what's happening in qualifying. Straight up, I think that's happening in qualifying.
I mean, that reminds me of the casino section. He could do that exact thing during the casino section.
Yeah. It could be, right? But like blue flags too. I mean, that's tough in Monaco. It's already such a narrow
Very
circuit.
Hard in Monaco.
So maybe just to wrap up with a little bit of humor. I know we're.
I know this clip.
It's a hot topic, but this must have been Sergio Perez while he was kind of going behind Mazepin and was thinking, what is this car?
Olivier Panis found the Morris particularly annoying.
What is this shit box? What is this car? A Morris?
I think I had one more here. That was Mick on that one. I think there was. Okay, maybe I didn't have one. Well, let's play this one too, because this was obviously his teammate, the lone positive at Haas this year, when he actually got by the Williams of Nicholas Latifi, which was a nice little battle.
He's done a move. He's overtaken somebody.
I love it was a blue car
that's
too.
Exactly how I felt.
I mean, I felt bad for Latifi and Russell because they had a tough go this weekend with their car not going well. But at the same time, I felt very good for Mick and like his engineer. Yes, just loving it on the radio as well. So I mean, it's good for Mick. He's driving really well, and he's put in a tough situation right now. But you can see he's learning a lot in the first 3 races. I mean, the growth process between the first race of the season and here in Portimao. I has been very noticeable already. So I can't imagine him when we get to race 15, 16 of the season.
Absolutely, and yeah, like you said, I felt bad for Latifi, but I felt really good for Mick making that pass. I think that's his first overtake in F1. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Other than his teammate.
Other than his teammate, that doesn't count. That's not really a driver.
Jeez.
I'm sorry, I'm being very harsh. But you guys should know my hate for Esteban Ocon has gone towards Mazepin.
Good.
That's fair
Esteban
enough.
had a let's transition that because Esteban had he had a fantastic race.
Our segues are on point tonight.
They are. He had a fantastic weekend. I'm so proud of Esteban. Just killing it all weekend. And Alonso had a great one as well. I'll let you segue off, Chris, but just I'm so proud of them.
That was what I was going towards. So nice.
Thank you. No, I 100% completely agree with you. And you know what? Esteban Ocon, if he continues this trend, he might deserve a video of his own for us to put out, just because, tell you what, I thought Alonso was going to come in and thrash Ocon like he did to Van Dorn, but that is not the case, man. 2 races in a row, outraced and outqualified him. Alonso was very pissed off with himself for not performing very well in qualifying, and then eventually redeemed himself in the race and had a really strong finish to the race. Actually, he just found pace all of a sudden, whereas in the first part of the race, I even think Martin Brundle was saying like Alonso's struggling a lot, and then 15 laps later, he's like zooming past Carlos Sainz and everybody. But Alpine found a lot of good pace with those upgrades, so whether they can continue that slope now, it seems like they've gotten ahead of Aston Martin, which, I don't know what's going on over there. Can they challenge now, against Ferrari? I think it's a little bit close or a little bit tougher for them. But Ocon, man, for me, yeah, he's been one of the most impressive drivers so far.
I think so too. And both the cars worked really well on the hard tires. So, maybe there's just a setup that they had worked really well with the hard tires and they were aiming for that, but they were flying throughout the race. And like you mentioned, it was like Alonso came out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's passing Ricardo and he's passing Sainz. You're like, holy where is there's the old Alonso that we like.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously for Esteban, great qualifying and a great race as well. So it's awesome to see from the Alpines, because I was worried at the start, like, oh, what's going on with their car? It just didn't seem great in Bahrain, but Portimao seemed like a great track for them.
Mm-hmm. I know I probably mentioned it before about maturity about drivers and seeing it in Lando Norris this season. But I think that's the biggest difference I've noticed. I think from, year one, when we saw an Esteban Ocon, we had that whole incident with Max. Year 2, we saw a little more aggressiveness in him, having Daniel Ricciardo as his teammate, being brought in as that, that's second driver, even though there was no real list for them. But I think just the maturity that, he's in this third year that I've seen with him racing. I think this is his third year overall, if I'm not wrong. Fourth?
Fourth, I think.
Yes, it is. Okay. But yeah, it's just the maturity throughout the race, just keeping it cool the entire time, qualifying. At the end, he wasn't happy. I think he was more happy that they got double team points than he was with him getting P7. And Fernando Alonso was great. I think there was a little bit of Daniel Ricciardo probably had a little sad song playing in his head as Alonso passed by. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah.
But I think like you guys already mentioned, his qualifying wasn't the greatest. He was upset with himself. Brought it all back for that race to kind of push for that P8 spot. The best position they can probably get all weekend. With everything that happened, I think P7 and P8 is probably exactly where we're probably going to see out, in terms of the best that they can get, fighting it off with McLaren and Ferrari. So yeah, great race overall from both of them. But like I said, the maturity that I've seen Esteban Ocon has really turned me around on him. He's having a great year. You can see that he's really put in that time from the year that he had off. He's really put in that time. So.
Yeah, and it seems like they're really trying to work together as a team with Alonso as well to try and get themselves forward. But compared to where they were in Bahrain, they definitely have made a pretty significant step forward. And they're really in that battle. I think third place is out of reach for them this year just because of how strong McLaren is and Ferrari as well. But if they can finish ahead of Aston Martin, for example, this season, I think that would be a big positive considering where Aston were last season as Racing Point. And if we transition then on to Aston Martin, then we look at Sebastian Vettel, who's probably had his best weekend so far with the team, obviously making it into Q3, starting the race in 10th, but their race pace is just nowhere really at the moment. And eventually they finished 13th and 14th. And Vettel's still pointless, of course, in 2021. Some positives for him personally, but I just think the team is kind of in a weird sort of no man's land at the moment where 3 races in, they haven't really shown much to us, and they were probably the most hyped team coming into this year.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on. I know obviously that high rake, and they lose a lot of advantages that they had last season, being a high rake team like Mercedes, but it's tough because, like you mentioned, they're very hyped going into the season, and there's a lot expected of Aston Martin with all this money coming in, and obviously a big brand in Aston Martin and the racing history that they have. So, maybe the tracks haven't been able to suit them. I don't think Portimao was ever really a good track for Racing Point. If I remember to last year, the Racing Points didn't do well in Portimao. I don't remember. So, I mean, it just depends. Maybe they have the track set up like they usually do, where they're looking for those long straights, high speed, no mechanical grip tracks, where Portimao had to, involve a lot of mechanical grip, especially in those slippery conditions that we saw all weekend. Well, nice to see at least Vettel show some pace during qualifying, but I want him to get a few points in Aston Martin here already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can see that Vettel still kind of settling into that car. I mean, it was a big factor of the car not being there this weekend. The team not having that car set up properly. Sorry. We saw them be both in 13th, 14th place, all struggling for pace the entire time. So yeah, it's a tough track for them for sure. Definitely, from what, like you guys said, from what we saw from Racing Point from last year to turn to Racing Aston Martin, the hype just hasn't kept up. We're 3 races into the season. I think Lance Stroll has the first race of the season. But yeah, I think from the hype that we saw last year, it's just not quite there yet. With even with the Aston Martin name attached to it. But I think it's going to take a few for sure. I mean, Barcelona is going to be a kind of good factor to show them. That's their test track, right? So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think they are expected to bring some sort of an upgrade package to Barcelona as well, which is kind of customary generally on a regular calendar year. So maybe it will be a little bit delayed this season, but I think that they'll try and bring some updates to the car. So the final 2 things for me really from this race, and then we can kind of maybe wrap up on a couple other topics. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Kimi Räikkönen, who obviously we saw the mistake early on in the race, but he owned up to it right away and really didn't make any bones about it and said it was my fault. He even said on the radio, he hoped he didn't damage Antonio Giovinazzi's tires, which of course luckily they weren't. So yeah, just a shout out to Räikkönen to owning up to a mistake. I think he was looking on the dash at a steering wheel and just really misjudged it.
Yeah, I don't know if he said to a reporter or what, but he said that he was switching a dial on his steering wheel and just lost track where he was and didn't think he was closing in that fast on Giovinazzi. So, and of course, even worse luck, usually you'd be able to coast around the track and get a new front wing and continue, but his front wing literally lifted his front tires off the ground. So
yeah,
just like double bad luck for Räikkönen, unfortunately.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. I mean, it was a good thing to shut off that car right away. Probably better overall for them for the season, to hold on to a lot of their parts and not have to spend as much money. But yeah, it's like you said, Chris, right away, he's like, I really hope I didn't ruin Giovinazzi's race.
Yeah.
So great. Yeah, really good to see. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else.
Yeah.
Just meant the Iceman got to go to his motorhome a little earlier and have some vodka, just like in Monaco.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he took the early flight home, but
Yeah.
or I don't know, maybe if he's going home or if he just went straight to Barcelona. It's not too far away.
That's true.
Yeah, because Barcelona will be just in a couple days' time, actually, by when we release this podcast. So finally, for me, the last thing that I just wanted to touch on is you mentioned McLaren earlier and Daniel Ricciardo's recovery drive to P9, but his teammate Lando Norris continuing his exceptional form that he did in 2020. It's his fourth straight top 5 finish and is actually third in the World Drivers' Championship after 3 races. He's ahead of Valtteri Bottas, actually, with 37 points. And I don't think he's actually that far behind Max Verstappen. If I just pull up the standings here,
Max Verstappen has 61 and Lando Norris with 37, and then Bottas with 32.
there you go. So, I mean, it is a little bit farther away, obviously, from Verstappen. But regardless, anyways, a McLaren Mercedes is in the top 3 of the championship. But Norris just had another really good race. It kind of flew under the radar because of, obviously, the action up front. But shows just how good that McLaren is. They're extremely friendly to their tires. Unfortunate for Daniel Ricciardo getting, knocked out in Q1, and you really hope that he can get on top of the new car as well, like some of the other new drivers at their teams, and then join his teammate, because if you have 2 McLarens fighting up there, it's going to make it harder for the likes of Alpine and Ferrari. But Norris is really, really putting the team on his back this season so far, and it's just great to see.
Yeah. And if I just want to point out that if somehow Valtteri Bottas gets no points next week and Sergio Perez manages to get at least 5th place, he'll be tied with Valtteri as well. So they're not far off. But again, that's him getting absolutely no points next weekend.
Right.
No, Lando has been very good, and it's shown in the standings. Obviously, 1 podium and 3 top 5s, like you mentioned. So it's awesome to see from the young driver. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of hype behind him and hype behind George, especially from the UK media outlets, because why not? There should be. They're 2 very talented drivers, and Norris is really showing it this so far this season. And hopefully Ricciardo he showed a lot of great pace this weekend as well, Ricciardo. And it's only 3 races. He still have to come to grips. I think from Turkey on is really the start of okay, let's see how they've settled into their cars now. So McLaren I think are sure shot number 3, the number 3 car on the grid right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that, and it's going to be hard to kind of knock them off that perch in top 3. Even though Ferrari does look good, they had another solid race weekend. Carlos Sainz's side of the garage didn't really get the strategy right, but Charles Leclerc put in another great weekend. Sainz seems to be, out of all the new drivers, have adjusted the most quickly and has adjusted the best, really, because he did already out-qualify Charles in this race, starting 5th. But nonetheless, I still think McLaren are the strongest out of that bunch. And we'll see in a couple of these races, track dependent, that they might be able to battle for that podium like they did in Imola. So it's just great to see. And it's nice to see Norris really getting that attention. You all see all the hype is around George Russell, but Norris is kind of really stealing that thunder as of late. And kind of showing that, okay, he's just not just a Twitch streamer, not just a gamer online. He's one of the best drivers in the world. So excellent job for Lando Norris. Now, you guys have anything else from the Portuguese Grand Prix before we kind of wrap up with just our final topic?
Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Sergio Perez technically the best one because he out-qualified Max last weekend? Am I wrong?
The best driver?
No, like in terms of the shakeup between like Sainz.
Oh,
yeah, I guess you could say that.
Sorry, I was just making sure because we've been told that we have to get our facts straight. So.
By who?
Hey, I might be wrong, but I'm right. Sergio Perez did get pole position last race.
Second place.
Second place. Okay. Yes. Okay.
But you're right. He did out-qualify Max. Yeah. And I guess the only thing I would say to that is that the RB16 is a much better car than the SF1. Sure. Is it called SF1? No, it's not called the SF21 this year. Mm-hmm. So I think that in that sense, if you look at it, you could say, well, maybe Sainz is the best one because the car isn't as good. But I would say Perez, just because of how long he's been with Force India / Racing Point, and Red Bull is a dramatically different car to what he's used to. So yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Which we might get fact checked for, I guess.
Probably.
Tyler, anything from your end then that we might have missed that you picked up on watching the race?
No, not really. Just I want to see how Spain turns out. I mean, I've never been a big fan of Spain and circuits, so I know I've been vocal on that on the podcast before. So I want to be highly optimistic going into the race and keep my mind open to see what's going to happen. But I hope for an entertaining race.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's no fans in Spain yet, right? For the race.
That's right.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because that would have been a great, great to see with the fans to see Fernando Alonso returning to F1, having 2 Spanish drivers on the grid as well. That would have been great to see. But yes, I'm really looking forward to it. Should be really good. I hope.
I hope so too. They made some adjustments to turn 10. They've essentially extended the braking zone, so they made it sort of a little bit wider going into turn 10. If you guys remember, it's kind of a heavier braking zone hairpin. I don't think that's really going to affect, improve the overtaking or the action really all that much. Forecast I've seen possibly some rain, but it's too early to tell, and it never really materializes anyway. And I'm already working on the preview for Spain, and it's not good news because it's kind of like Monaco, where out of the 30 races at the Barcelona Catalunya circuit, 23 out of 30 of the races have been won from pole position, and only 2 have been won from outside of top 2 on the grid. So in a way, it's kind of like Monaco, where you have to essentially qualify on pole if you really want a good chance to win the race. So at least Saturday will be interesting, and it'll be very exciting. But I agree with you guys. It's always that race where it's like Russia when it comes up. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not that excited for this one, but hopefully it proves us wrong.
Yep.
I just want to mention the turn 10. The only thing I could think of it helping out, Chris, is maybe some crossover moves. If someone dives in deep on the inside, it will help the car out on the outside be a little bit wider to help with that crossover move. So could lead to some past turn 10 exciting racing, turn 11, turn 12. But we'll see. It's a modification they're trying out there, and there's nothing you can do but try.
The old switcheroo.
That's right.
Well, that's for Barcelona, and it's coming up quickly, the first back-to-back of this season. So that's it for the Portuguese Grand Prix recap. And of course, comment down below your thoughts if maybe we missed anything. Let us know down in the comments below. We're curious to know what you guys thought of this race. Now, just to wrap up this podcast, I just wanted to maybe spend a few minutes talking about the sprint qualifying idea that was recently passed. We didn't get to touch on it in the previous podcast because it wasn't finalized, and then obviously in the live stream we didn't get to talk about it. So I just wanted to kind of dedicate a few minutes to this debate or just you guys' opinions. I'm curious because I know you guys were saving your thoughts for the podcast and what you thought about it. So let me start with you, Tyler. I know you were kind of holding your opinion close to your heart when I asked you, but what do you think of the changes? And maybe before that, actually, it would be helpful maybe for people that don't know the exact format, if you don't mind just me going through it. So the proposed changes, it will happen at Silverstone, Monza, and then a race to be decided at a later point. I think it's going to be a non-European circuit.
I want to debate that with you guys too, and where we think it's going to be, but we'll get to that after the rules. Go ahead.
Okay. So essentially the way the new weekend format is going to work. So on Friday, you're going to have practice 1, which will be 60 minutes. So like it is now. And then later on in the day, you won't have an FP2. You will have a qualifying, and it will be the same qualifying format as we have now. So Q1, Q2, Q3, and that is for the sprint race on Saturday. So then we move into the Saturday events on the weekend. We have practice 2, which will be in the morning. So that's another 60-minute session like you would, let's say, your FP3 on a normal weekend like we do now. And then following practice 2 on the Saturday, you get the sprint qualifying race, which is the 20-lap race to determine the grid for Sunday. And then, of course, Sunday's race is the traditional race. For example, if it would be Spain, it'd be the 66-lap race. So that would be that. So with that in mind, Tyler, what are your thoughts on this idea? And do you think it's going to work?
Is there no reverse grid?
No reverse grid.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. So that's one of the things that I was kind of keeping, why I didn't want to put my whole opinion out there. That's the only problem I can see with this format, is that with no reverse grid, we could see, if say Lewis wins, well, Lewis is going to just drive off into the sunset probably for the whole race. So That's the only problem I see with it. Other than that, I think it's a fantastic idea because I like F1 trying to go out of the box a little bit, and this is a safe way to do it. It works in F2, it works in F3. I think it's a proven method that leads to exciting racing. It's not drawn out. It could really bring in people who are maybe just starting to get into F1 and they want to watch. They don't want to sit down for 2 hours and watch a race. They want to watch a 30-minute, 30, 40-minute race. They can sit down and watch that in a sitting pretty much, and maybe get a little excited about F1, and then you bring them into the full races. So I think it's a great marketing idea. I think it's a good race idea as well. Obviously the teams, I would think, have to sign off on it. I think all in all, you can't blame anyone for trying. If it fails, well, they tried it, it didn't work out, but I think it could lead to success. And I wouldn't want to see it for every single race on the calendar. Like, I don't need to see it in Spain twice. I don't need to see 2 Spain races.
Yeah.
I don't need to see 2 races in Russia. The same sort of thing. It'd be nice maybe if they do it for half the year. It's 10 races on the grid, let's say, and they pick 10 tracks, and they can change throughout the years. Maybe Monza has it one year and Portimao, for example, has it the next year instead. Lots of very different ways you can do it, but all in all, I give it an 8 out of 10 so far.
Shaker, what do you think?
I think it's an interesting idea, but I also have the opinion that it's just F1 trying to make a bunch more money out of the weekend. I get it. It's like you said, Tyler, it's a great marketing strategy to bring more fans in because, like you said, it's a 30, 40-minute sit down compared to 2 hours. It's a flat out track. You're only racing for 100 kilometers. So and I think for the fans, it's great. For our viewership, it's great. I just think I don't know how it's from the team or driver's point of view, because obviously technically instead of doing qualifying in a full race, they're doing qualifying in almost 2 races throughout the weekend. Pushing their engines a little bit more, pushing their entire team a little bit more, because obviously that involves more strategies to be done, less time to figure out the setup of their car for the weekend. Less setup for the race, but more to figure out their setup for the actual race, because then they have to. It's kind of like the sprint race acts like a free practice for qualifying as well as a race. So it's interesting. I don't know if I'm sold just yet. I think I would have to see it like on a couple of races. But like qualifying, I mean, there is still qualifying. I don't know. I'm kind of like just sitting right in the middle of, I like the idea, but until I see it, I'm not sold on it.
Fair. That's fair.
And I would be in agreement of that. And I saw this on Twitter, and I think it's probably the best way to summarize how I feel about this sort of proposed or I guess trial run format is an ingenious solution to a problem that we don't have. It's like, I thought that the weekend format was pretty solid the way it was, and they shortened the practice sessions this year, which I thought, okay, at first I wasn't that happy about it, but now watching it, I like it. It's a bit easier as a fan to, on Friday, watch all the sessions. Now, as a fan, eventually, hopefully one day going back to the tracks, I like the 90-minute practice sessions because on a Friday, for example, you get to watch 3 hours of cars running around the track, which is phenomenal for, us as Canadian F1 fans. We only get to go to one race a year. So seeing as much on-track action for us is great. So for me, again, I'm with Shaker. I want to see how this works first and then have more of an opinion about it. Some of the issues that I see is, like you said, Tyler, like, if the race is just going to be, the sprint race, for example, is just going to be more like the real races, then it's just going to be, more of the same. There's no pit stops, for example. So are we really going to see much overtaking with the generation of cars that we have now? Then the other question is, in a racing scenario, you've obviously got the more chances for accidents and bigger crashes. So how would that affect things for the big race on Sunday in terms of repairs? We got the budget cap now, so are we going to have more engines or more money for spare parts? Whatever it is, I think those are some of the issues that I see. But like I said, I agree. Let's see how it works. We do it at 3 races this year. If it's a total catastrophe like the 2016 qualifying format, then it gets scrapped. But I like the fact that they've learned from those previous mistakes and are going to trial run it first, and then bring it in permanently or not at all. But I think it's also tough this year too because we have a close championship. So I don't necessarily agree with trialing it this year just because of the fact that we have a very close championship, and that might screw things up a little bit if it doesn't go as well as they hope it does. So,
well, there aren't many points being awarded though. First place gets 3 points, second place gets 2 points, and third place gets 1 point, and that's all the points awarded, I think.
right. I mean, in terms of if there was some sort of failure, component wise or crash or something, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and you're right. I think maybe starting it when they had the entire rule change coming to get 2022 now next year. I think maybe if they tried it for 3 races during that season, probably would have been a better trial period because that way the teams know their budget cap a little bit more. They know what they're dealing with. Doing it this year, going into a year where they're going to be putting a budget cap, might completely change the format. Maybe it's not viable to do sprint races every weekend, or every however many times they decide to do it.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point with that budget cap. I mean, it's something that's under the radar right now with teams trying to figure out, of course, how they can spend to the max of the budget cap and strain on engines, like you mentioned, Shaker. I mean, that's going to be a big thing, especially as they're trying to get less and less engines throughout the year to help the budgets. But putting more strain on them, of course, will lead to more failures. So who knows how this is going to work out? I mean, it would have been interesting to see if they did the F2 style where the top 8 is reverse grid. 8th in the sprint race starts first, but I know a lot of F1 drivers are very against the reverse grid format. Yeah, I mean, we'll only know if we try it, right?
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And just quickly, just to throw in our tracks that the third track that they might pick as a non-European circuit. I'm thinking maybe something in the U.S. So either obviously just the circuit of the Americas, or I'm thinking also maybe Mexico.
Where I think the sprint race would do really well is Miami when it does happen.
Yeah,
I think it would be a great just because they're trying to make it like Monaco. It's supposed to be this extravagant party that you go to, right? And I think for us to have a sprint race event like that set up, to have more people to watch, I think it'd be a more interesting format to run at those races like Monaco or Miami when they go there, because it's more of a spectacle than anything. We watch it because we want to watch the race. People watch it as a spectacle. So
yeah. I'm thinking of it purely as the race. And what's going to give me the most exciting race in 20 laps. And I'm thinking Interlagos at Brazil. I think a 20-lap sprint race would be fantastic around there.
We're thinking of that, but F1 is thinking of money.
I know, but I've got to think of it this way. So I don't know. I think it'd be a fantastic Interlagos.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
That's my pick is Brazil for this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that one actually. I think that one probably should be the way to go. Narrow circuit, but also plenty of areas for overtaking and a track that's given us exciting races. So yeah, that's a good. I didn't even think of that one actually.
Drivers can be really aggressive around there too. So I mean, it's a perfect kind of aggressive track to do it at.
I'd go Spa or Hungary. I think
Spa is an interesting shout, Shaker. I think that's another spot that we work around.
Yeah, I think Spa would be pretty good. Hungary would be interesting, but I think Spa would be my choice.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. It's a new and exciting idea, and F1 definitely not afraid to try and mix things up. So yeah, let us know what you guys think. Obviously, this is a highly debated topic, and everybody's got their opinions. But I think that'll be interesting to talk about this on a future podcast after Silverstone when we actually see what it looks like. And I think maybe we'll probably try and do some live streams for one of the sprint races or something like that, just to see how it goes, and everybody will see our live reaction, and we'll hear everybody else's live reaction. So it might be the best thing in the world, or it might be the worst thing, but I think we can all agree that we're very happy that they're at least trialing it and not that they just overhauled the whole format for the whole season right in one go. So yeah, comment down below. What do you guys think? And let us know whether it's going to work or not. So should be very interesting. All right. Well, I think that'll do it then for episode 104. Do you guys have anything else you want to add in before we sign off?
Nope, that's it for me. See what Spain brings.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be very interesting. Round 4 of the championship, currently 2-1 for Hamilton in terms of race wins. Of course, Hamilton's still looking for that 100th pole position as well. So a lot to play for, and hopefully the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya will be friendly to us this year and actually provide quite the entertainment for us over 66 laps. But that does it for the Portuguese Grand Prix recap for 2021. Thank you so much for watching along and listening along to us. If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, and if you like some of our other videos, consider giving us a subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to on an audio platform, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or any of the other favorite podcast platforms, give us a good rating on there, and also follow us as well so you never miss a new episode following every race this season in the F1 calendar. So that will do it for us. For Shaker Barty and Tyler McDonald, I'm Chris Cato for the Backmarkers F1 Show, and until next time, it's bye for now. Take care, guys.